see the effects of how environmental issues are affecting us. I think many of us have been interested at one time or another in the mysteries of all the societies that have collapsed. Within the last few decades, archaeologists have proven that there were environmental problems having to do with many of these past collapses. There were also many places where societies have been developing for thousands of years and not shown signs of a possible collapse. So what makes some societies more fragile than others? Why is this our problem? Our planet is quite a wonder, a perfectly improbable incubator for life. We live in a world of unseeable beauty, so subtle and delicate that it is unnoticeable to the human eye. But it's also in danger because of our indifference. I read a lot, and recently I've read more magazines and news articles that have to do with our environment. In those articles, global warming is listed as today's biggest issue. Global warming may lead to the end of our beloved Earth. Let's see what global warming actually is. The simplest meaning of global warming is that it's an increase in the average temperature of the Earth's atmosphere, therefore responsible for the change in global climate and the rise of sea levels. Most people know that China is facing extreme air and water pollution. This often doesn't even faze people. I mean, why should we Americans care about a country almost literally across the world? They're so far away that it shouldn't hurt us, right? Wrong. The water pollution affects the coasts of China and Japan. Thanks to currents, the pollution can spread all through the Pacific. Thus, the pollution will be our problem within a decade. What's a big deal with China collapsing? We are America, after all. Well, consider this. China is a major player and contributor to the global economy. If China goes, America's economy will be practically crippled. Many centuries ago, immigrants lived on fertile land blessed with many natural resources. It had lacked a few raw materials that were important for industry, but they were readily obtained by overseas trade. But as the forest of Mangariva Island was stripped and its soil had eroded, the land could no longer nourish even its own population, let alone grow food for export to the Pitcairn and Henderson Islands. As the trade declined, the import of raw materials began to run short, and the two smaller islands began to collapse. They were deprived of the imports which they had depended on, and they damaged their own environments until there was no one left. This is happening to us today. With China's pollution and downfall happening, eventually we will too, since we gain an abundant amount of our goods from them. All the effects of global warming are negative. Did you know that 1 in 10 people worldwide don't have access to clean drinking water? Water is a precious resource with limited availability in many regions around the planet. However, climate change could make this situation much worse. Warming temperatures will destabilize the water cycle. Some areas will experience increased droughts, whereas others will witness intense rainfall, leading to more floods. Where I live, there used to be a drought, and they had to cut water consumption by 20%. Only recently did the rain start again. This had caused problems to the point where we could not consume large quantities of water for quite a while. The same thing was happening in Colorado, where the winter started later, and in Louisiana or St. Louis, where the flooding was increasing in the rivers to a point where people's homes were being inflicted. If we go back 200 years, there are lots of empires that collapsed, mainly because of war over land and resources. This was a result of the climate changing. Right now, in this case, there is not enough land and resources to sustain our biosphere. Sooner or later, we are going to have to face all of this pollution and global heating. It isn't just a problem in another country. It's an issue that will catch up with us, whether we like it or not. We will have to face the damage and pollution that we have brought into this world. When that happens, we won't be able to just brush it under the rug. We will have to face it head on and make sure we don't succumb to the mistakes that our ancestors have made or our present day leaders. If we don't fix these problems, they are going to be our problem, and it isn't just their fault. We are having a lot of our companies outsourced into China and force more factories and fossil fuels to be made. They're constantly producing in these poor countries where there are no regulations, which drags them down just to keep the United States on top in consumerism and all that comes with that. The factories are emitting CO2 into the atmosphere, which is degrading oxygen in these places. This is causing problems in terms of global warming and the amount of power these countries have over it. I'm telling you about this because I believe it is important to have knowledge about our current situation and how we should take action now. If we don't take action as soon as possible, then the planet won't be habitable anymore. Any environmental issue that is occurring in other areas will affect me too. Earth is my home, and I care about keeping it safe. Do you? Global warming will not only affect me and you, but also the future generations that are to come. We need to lead by example, so I ask you as good-natured people, just realize how we are all damaging the Earth, and do your part to fix it. Thank you.